Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have lots to discuss. We're sort of feeling out what has happened over the last few days since 12 noon on Monday, and really things got started before that. But a lot of signings. I think I saw in Cap Friendly, which, by the way, will go the way of the dodo bird on, I believe, Friday. 190 signings.
Wow.
Now, obviously, a lot of them are just re-ups or minor leaguers signing, two-way contracts with teams, teams filling out rosters of AHL teams and whatever. But a lot of signings and a lot of prominent names moving to places we didn't expect them to go. So we'll talk about that. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so keeping up with most sports, Major League Baseball decided, can we top all the other sports with our all-star uniforms? And they did. They really look like softball jerseys. Like, I feel like now I could go down to everybody's got a place in town where, you could just make them up for a couple $100 for the softball season. I feel like I could do as good a job. I'm like appalled at what they look like. I got to be honest.
Is this Fanatics or is this the league? Because
I don't know. It's somebody. I mean,
you would think the league would have some input, and if they do, the people who had that input should be fired. But the thing is, I mean, okay, you're 60, I'm 57. We're the old guys in the balcony, Statler and Waldorf. But honestly, I know what a good jersey looks like.
Yeah, I've got an all-star jersey from when it was in Houston. I got a Mets one, a Piazza one, and that one looked great. Like that, I got to tell you though,
I know what a good jersey looks like, and these don't look good. They look terrible.
These are brutal. Like,
yeah,
I'm actually speechless because, I'm looking at like the jersey part of it now, and it's just. Even the font is awful. The numbers are like too rounded. I don't know what, to say what team they're from, they're putting like TOR for Toronto. Like, why?
Yeah. They're trying, what there is? They're trying to be too cool. When you try to be cool, you end up being lame.
Yeah. This reminds me of when the Olympics had like Ralph Lauren do the uniforms and they were hideous.
Yeah, I don't get it, but hey, they're not shooting, they're not looking at us. They're not because
I don't know if they're looking at anybody. Like, I'm looking at these hats. Obviously, I own a lot of hats.
Well, some of the crap that has been out there, like most of the reverse retro jerseys in the NHL were crap, but people bought them because they were different and because
I get that.
They maybe appeal to the younger demographic. I don't know. I mean, if the younger demographic thinks that these jerseys look good, they got to get a friggin' clue. But hey,
at least, I don't understand. It's like, like some of these hats, they all have the Texas Star, and I'm fine. Some of them are in their team colors, and then some of them are in the goofy all-star colors. And the ones that are in the all-star colors are just disgusting. Like you've got the Cubs. And you've got that like sky blue, then a dark blue, then the sky blue, then like, I don't know what this other color, it may be orange. And it's like, where's like one Cubs color? Even the logo for the Cubs is in like sky blue. Like, who's wearing this?
Yeah. They look like pajamas. Anyway, let's get with the hockey stuff. Hello Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology and NHLDraftBuzz.com.
And I'm Michael Agello, and still recovering from the cross-country flight. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here at HockeyBuzz.com. But I know what I have to say. I was luckier than Russ because Russ had his flight canceled on the way to Vegas and then got diverted because of weather on the way back from Vegas. And for the second time in a year, you had to get a hotel. Now, the airlines doesn't reimburse you for this. It's like
here's the way it worked. They did reimburse people. I wasn't going to wait on a 25-minute line when my brother lives in close by Chicago. And so I just took an Uber and left. And I was just like, I'll worry about it later. I'm negotiating with them. They're going to do something for me. So they're at least going to do that part. But yeah, I had on the way there, on the way back, and even that flight that day got pushed back like 5 hours.
Jesus.
I mean, it was just, I was happy to get out because I know people with WestJet are still stuck in Vegas.
And that's unbelievable. I think I mentioned during the show on Monday that I think one team, Toronto, had planned to stay in Vegas because they had to fly cross country and it was a day before free agency. And they said, okay, we don't want to risk being incommunicado. So we're going to stay here. We're going to do all of our stuff from here. And now, because of the WestJet strike, I mean, we had reporter friends that were still, I don't know if they're still there, but
they're there till Wednesday because apparently Air Canada is trying to pick up the slack, but it's backlogged.
So that's depending on the number of
today's Wednesday, so today they're probably flying home.
Yeah, so I mean that's an extra 3 or 4 days of hotel rooms. I'm sure. I have to say this: it's like I would not recommend going to Las Vegas in late June. I mean, it was 105, 101. It was hot at night. It was hot during the day. Because we didn't get your input on Monday. What was your impression of the Sphere?
The Sphere was great. I mean, it was like being in an IMAX movie. It really, when they did the pictures with the first rounder and every bit of team personnel, that was nice the way they did that because that's how the teams feel and the scouts feel. Like once a year they could all be together and take a nice group photo. That's something where it creates good memories. The graphics were incredible. Most everything was good, and if they have it there next year, I think they can work out the bugs. My thing is if it's going to be there next year, I'm going to return on a Monday. I'm not even going to try and return on a Sunday because I think that's part of the problem. They don't have it. It just seems like airlines are not staffed up on Sundays.
Right, and everybody tries to get out of Vegas on a Sunday.
Now, the people who got out on Saturday night on a red eye did get home.
Yeah,
and I just don't want to take a red eye anymore.
No, it sucks, especially when you're flying cross country. I took a red eye from Seattle to New York City.
It's never ending.
Right, Seattle to New York City in 2019 when we were in Vancouver, and that was when you have a baby sitting next to you,
and there always is. Like when I got on my flight the other day, there was a screaming kid. Always.
And then we'll get to the hockey. The only thing I can say is that I was lucky enough that I did not have to put my carry-on luggage in the belly of the plane. Even though I was like in one of the later zones, usually it gets to the point where they say the overheads are filled. And with my luck, I'd probably my bag would end up in Timbuktu when I get in Buffalo. But anyway, so let's talk about we'll just do the news today, but we want to go back to July 1st. The Anton Lundell signing. This was I was a little stunned that Florida has the advantage of getting players to sign for a little less because it's the no tax state. But I'm a little surprised that they got Lundell, who is a very good player. Maybe he hasn't put up big numbers yet, but they got a young player on a 6-year deal at $5 million. This is an absolute bargain. He's 22 years old. So they got him through age 28 at $5 million. And I think this is a guy who's going to score 20, 25 goals with regularity.
Yeah, I think this is a smart signing because he's identified that guy as one of the guys he needs moving forward. He's getting him now before he really maxes out as a player. There's room for him to grow into this contract. It's not a cap-busting contract. And like I said, I mean, everybody can bitch and moan about all these no-tax states, but if you combine that with a GM that identifies guys and can make good signings ahead of time, that's when you're really doing something. A lot of GMs don't even do that part well.
Yeah. No, I have to say, though, that, if you're talking winners and losers, and I sort of labeled that for the show today, I mean, it's natural for a Stanley Cup champion to get their roster pilfered by other teams in the league. The Florida had more than the usual amount of unrestricted free agents, so they were going to lose players. But they lost some key players. I mean, they lose Brandon Montour on a 7-year deal going to Seattle. They lose Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who was a very valuable depth defenseman for them, to Toronto on a 4-year deal. They lose Lomberg. They lose, so they lost some pretty good players. Now you can say, I think their defense is nowhere close to as good as it used to be, even though now they've added Nate Schmidt on a bargain deal. Their defense is hurting a little bit, and that's the side effect sort of winning a championship.
Yeah, I mean that is, but I think they're going to be fine. I'm probably not going to pick them again to win, but I think they're going to be in the thick of it. And that's all you have to be.
Yeah. Okay. So winners and losers. Oh, okay. We'll go back to that in a minute, but we have to touch on, and I wish we had Kevin on the show so we could gloat a little bit, but I did gloat.
I wish we had Kevin on the show too, so I could gloat about Steve Stamkos.
Right. I did on the show on Monday, Russ, say, for Russ and I said my shoulder is sore from flying, but I am going to pat myself on the back.
Yeah, we've been saying that since he got dissed on not being offered even a contract negotiation during the offseason. Like we knew something was up.
And clearly, the way we read this situation was the way that it played out, because based on what Stamkos said on TSN, and I think he was on Sportsnet too, that he was dumbfounded at how this ended up. But we could see the playbook, the Tampa Bay playbook. And, Kevin said it's like, okay, you can have a playbook, you can have a plan, but at certain points you have to deviate from that plan when it's a player like a Steven Stamkos.
Right.
And that's the issue here. Okay, you don't want to sign a guy like Alex Killorn, who is a useful player, or Andre Palat, who's a useful player, because they're in their 30s and you had to give them a year or two extra. Okay, fine, I get it. You trade Ryan McDonough after winning a Stanley Cup because you can't afford to pay $6 million. Okay, I get it. You basically let Steven Stamkos go and gave his money for longer term to Jake Gensel. I'm telling you right now, you'll never get players not to want to go to Tampa Bay because the weather is great and the no tax. This in the end is going to hurt Tampa Bay big time. I really think.
Yeah. So I think it's going to hurt him because, again, it's not like Gensel's like a young, upstart guy. He's not. If his speed starts to diminish, his play is going to start to diminish. Stamkos has gone through a brick wall for that organization, including, coming back from that leg injury just to be on the ice for the Stanley Cup. They're going to be missing their biggest leader, and it's not easy to replace. You could make Victor Hedman your captain. He's still not going to have the heart of Steve Stamkos. I tried to tell people that he's as special. He's just that little bit off from Crosby, and those guys have been, duking it out, so to speak, for who's the best hockey player of their generation for a while. And he is the closest to Mark Messier as a leader in this generation, and they're going to miss that. And they gave him an insulting offer. I mean, it was just stupid.
Yeah, the chatter around in Vegas was the offer that was made to Stamkos was $3 million for 8 years. Now it was a 8-year deal masqueraded as a 4-year deal masqueraded as an 8-year deal. But the whole point here is that this guy took less to stay in Tampa 8 years ago, and you're doing it to him again. There's such a thing as respect. And, okay, you painted yourself into a corner. Then you sign Steven Stamkos to a 3 or 4 year deal and you don't sign Jake Gensel. Okay, you made the calculation. And you also, what this obviously turns out to be is we can only sign one of the veteran guys, either Hedman or Stamkos. And we gave Hedman the same deal that Stamkos got in Nashville. But okay, why is it Stamkos who's the one who's got to take the the sort of shell game type of offer? Why is it? It's because Hedman's a defenseman, and Hedman wasn't going to take it. So you deemed Hedman more valuable than Stamkos, and that's arguable. I mean, I don't like what they did in the terms of, they brought in Gensel and they traded Sergachev after bringing in McDonough. So your defense is not as good, I don't think, because Sergachev is better. He's younger and he's better than McDonough. McDonough's a great defenseman.
Yeah, McDonough is just at this point not quite that.
Right. So your defense is not as good, and your offense now without Stamkos is not as good. So
if you're going to point out to Michael Cohen in the chat room and anybody else who believes this thing that he just posted, that he's his power play specialist. Yes, he had 19 power play goals. He had 21 even strength goals.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about?
Well, it's Michael Cohen. It's Michael Cohen. He's getting prepared for being put into jail when a certain person wins.
Just like, at least be accurate here. He's 56% on faceoffs, like when he gets them. Like, now, he can still do everything.
Now, I have to say that I think the team that was, I don't know what the big winner, but I would put him in the winner category, is Nashville, in part because of Stamkos. So they signed Stamkos, 4 years, $32 million. They bring in Marchessault. They bring in Brady Shea. They re-sign UC Saros. Now they have O'Reilly under long-term deal. They have Forsberg under long-term deal. You've added Stamkos and Marchessault to that group, so you're going to be able to score more. Your defense is better with Brady Shea probably as the point guy on your power play. Nashville is significantly better.
They're not one of my winners though, because they spent like drunken sailors.
Okay, I mean, you could say that they're not a winner because they were not economical, but in terms of talent that they brought in.
Well, no, they brought in talent, Mike. But I mean, again, to me, the key is to bring the right guys in at the right price. It's easy when you have cap space to overspend. I could overspend.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, okay, so give me one of your winners.
Okay, the Devils.
Yeah.
They brought in Pesce. They brought in Brendan Dillon. So now they brought in that veteranship the veterans on defense that they needed. And Stefan Nason is also a very good under the radar guy, especially in the playoffs. That's good. That's good for a team.
And on top of that, they trade for Markstrom at a lower amount. So now they've added the goalie that Lindy Ruff never had there. They've added two defensemen to go along with the young, with Nemec and Hughes, and Dougie Hamilton's coming back.
Yep.
I mean, they're in a good place.
They got the right price at the right things, and Pesce is one of the jewels of the offseason, and they got him.
I'll give you one of my winners, and not only because I know that some people think this was an overpay, but let's just say this. Anybody who was a quality center in free agency was going to get overpaid. But you had to overpay them, and a team, I think, that made one really good economical signing and a team that addressed an area of need was Boston. They got Lindholm at under $8 million, which, maybe you could say, I thought he was going to get closer.
I don't love that, but I get it.
Yeah, they needed to fill, now with Lindholm, you slot Lindholm in front of Zacha and in front of Coyle. Now you've got a 1-2-3 that's a lot better. Zacha was not a number one, neither was Coyle, and now they're slotted better. I don't even think Lindholm's not a good number one, but in that system, you can get away with it. And they got Zadorov at $5 million a year, which I thought he was going to get more than that. No, don't get me wrong. Like before his playoff, I think people were thinking he was going to go in the fours, but then he had a monster playoff. He's, a big bruising. I mean, he's a Bruin. He is such a Bruin type of player. Mm-hmm. And those two players, now they lose DeBrusk. They traded Allmark, but those two additions are going to mean a lot. And Boston, for those who are
Lindholm, I'm down on Lindholm compared to what he used to be, but he's still a decent player.
Yes. So I think in the Atlantic, I think Boston helped themselves. I think Tampa and Florida got worse. Detroit really didn't do anything. Neither did Montreal. Ottawa, David Perron. They traded Chychrun. Now,
Well, when we get to the losers, I'll get to some teams.
Yeah. I mean, again, people are going to think I'm biased a little bit. I actually think Toronto did pretty well. The Tanev signing.
One thing before Toronto, before you go up on that.
Yeah.
Just to point this out to people, I thought Nashville got great players, but now they have no cap space. They are done. They are out of cap space. They're actually in negative cap space.
Right. They're going to move somebody out, or somebody's going on LTIR, or they're going to send somebody.
If they're winning the Stanley Cup, great. If they don't win the Stanley Cup, then you're going to be like, all right, why'd we do this?
Now, I'll just say this about Toronto. I'm not going to put them in any category because I cover them, so that would be sort of unfair. But I do think I look at the additions that they made. I liked the signing of Tanev. They spread out the AAV over 6 years, so it's lower and manageable. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, they had to give him probably a year more than I would like, but he's still good. He still played really well in the Stanley Cup now, and he's not
good. What's he good at?
I think he's good at everything.
No, he's not good at everything. You know why he was good in the spot he was in? Because he played down the lineup and there were no expectations. Then they threw him up in the lineup, and he did struggle. I don't think he's the same guy, Mike. I don't think he's good.
No. He is not the same guy that played in Arizona. He is not a top 5 NHL defenseman. They're looking for him to play probably 4, 5, 6, and that's, I think, realistic.
Yeah, I don't think he can play 4. Honestly, I don't.
Well, I mean, for those sort of amateurs who are slotting in where he's going to play, they're saying that he's probably going to pair with Liljegren on the bottom pairing. That's a pretty good bottom pairing.
That's fine. I mean, it's acceptable.
Yeah. So now the signing that I did not like was Anthony Stolarz, because I think Anthony Stolarz is a backup. I know he put up great numbers in Florida, but he played in front of a defense that won a Stanley Cup.
No, I agree with what you're saying, because for what they needed somebody that, in case Wall doesn't have it, gets hurt, can possibly lead you far into the playoffs, and I don't believe Stolarz can do that either.
Yeah, and I know that people will laugh. I mean, you cannot really depend on Matt Murray to be healthy. So, right. I mean, as a number 3, as somebody is break glass in case of, to fine, it's good insurance.
Sure.
But now I know Michael Cohen, you're an idiot because you've been ripping on Hakanpää. Hakanpää is going to play again. I know what Tony Soprano's talking about. He had a knee injury. He's healthy. He will be back this year. I think it was a great signing because it's $1.5 million a year. And
it's a low-cost signing. His skills have diminished somewhat, but if he gets back close to himself, yeah, it's another guy. At least you could add some physicality. It's fine.
Bottom pairing and penalty killer. That's what he is.
And that's fine.
He got hurt at the end of the year, and then Tanev took his spot. I mean, had he been healthy, he would have been a real helpful for Dallas in the playoffs. And he played 3 good years in Dallas, and he was healthy for most of that time. But anyway, okay, the teams that were, how shall I say it, not really involved.
Oh, there were teams that did almost nothing. I left them out of the worst because if you didn't do anything, I can't rip on you for just not doing anything.
Okay, so give me one of your losers. We'll alternate back.
New York Rangers.
That was one of the ones I said that they were barely involved, except for Sam.
Well, I mean, they made moves. It's
Sam Carrick on a 3-year, $3 million deal.
Right, Sam Carrick, Riley Smith is not the right fit. Casey Fitzgerald, and when did they start calling Benoit Olivier Gruel Bo Gruel? Like, that's how it came out. It's like, is he from Texas or is he from Canada?
Well, they'd rather call him Bo than Bo, because Bo.
I think they're trying to hide his identity because, like, he was a highly touted prospect and he just hasn't been able to put it together. But this was underwhelming. Like, it just was ridiculously bad. And, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I put them in sort of like the incomplete category because they really didn't do anything, and I expected them to do something. I don't understand the Riley Smith move.
I would have gotten Teravainen. Had they gotten Teravainen, he would have been like Jesper Fast plus, and they've been missing that kind of player. Riley Smith is no longer the guy that he was in Vegas. Yes, he's still fast, but once these fast guys start losing a little bit, he's not a great scorer otherwise. And he's a good playoff guy. All right, you want to hang on that? That's fine, but I didn't like it.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, really up front, I mean, okay, they add Carrick, who's a fourth line guy, a decent fourth line guy. That's fine.
He's okay.
I don't know what is Riley Smith there to replace Blake Wheeler? Is that what?
Well, I mean, that's what I think what they're thinking.
I mean, but at a salary of $3.75 million instead of $800,000, which Wheeler was.
Right, and they're also going to count on Hedl again, and I don't know if you can count on Hedl. We'll see. Otherwise, they're going to be, problematic up the middle again too.
Yeah, and overshadowing everything that's going on with the Rangers is the Trouba situation. And I read the article in The Athletic regarding apparent. Okay, now he had a no move clause up until July 1st. Then he had a 15-team no trade limit, so limited no trade that he had to submit to the Rangers. And apparently, according to this article, he isn't submitting or hasn't submitted it to the Rangers.
Right.
So, I mean, clearly he does not want to go.
He's not going to go anywhere, Mike. In the end, he's going nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, now I know that, like, we were talking about this in our group text. There are certain general managers who are taking a hit after July 1st. Julian Breezeball in Tampa, deservedly so, with the way the Stamkos thing was handled. Drury is starting to get a reputation after the Barclay Goodrow thing, and then what's going on with Trouba. I mean, it's not good. It isn't.
No. Look, I look at it like Trouba went there for a reason, and everybody was happy. Now, if you're all of a sudden not happy with his play, which I don't understand fully why, I get the downside of him, but the upside is still there. You know why he signed there. You know his wife has a residency there. You knew he planned on staying there. They set the contract a certain way. You knew he wasn't going anywhere. Like, it's a family decision. Just move. The best thing the Rangers could do is move away from it, because all it's doing is creating more bad press. And like you said, bad press for Drury.
Yeah. I'll give you one of my losers simply because they made one move that is inadequate to addressing their main problem. And gee, I'm sure people can guess what team I'm going to criticize. The New York Islanders. I mean, okay, do something about the fact that your offense sucks. You added Anthony Duclair. What is Anthony Duclair now? He can still skate. Sure, he's 28 years old. He's been on a billion teams. You gave him a 4-year deal. Maybe he scores 20 goals. He's not going to score you
20.
Yeah, he's not going to score you 40. And your problem is you don't have enough offense. And last year you barely made it because you couldn't play defense the first half of the year, and you wore out Sorokin, and you had to play Varlamov in the playoffs. So I mean, I don't like what they've done, but they again they're sort of painted into a corner because Lou has signed so many bad contracts there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind them doing that, and for some reason they love Mike Riley still. Fine, he's okay. Is it enough? No, it's probably not enough. But that's right now. That's the case. Where the Islanders are. They bought a lot of guys high, and they don't have a lot of cap space. So that's it.
A big loser for me is the Detroit Red Wings. If you look at what they did, okay, they re-signed Kane, okay, no problem. They re-signed Christian Fisher, no problem. Depth forward. Tyler Mott, bring him in on a 1-year deal, okay, no problem. You lose Gostisbehere, who they wanted to keep, and they replace him with Eric Gustafson. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, they're just looking at the points, and it's not like Gostisbehere plays defense either.
Their defense is starting. Hey, folks, okay, I'll read off some names to you. In the last two, in these, Justin Hall, Eric Gustafson, and William Lagesson. Those were 3 defensemen who in the last 2 years were members of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're no longer members of the Maple Leafs now. You know why? Because they all sucked. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. And I'm not saying this is, I'm saying this because Lagesson, he filled in for a while and played decently for the Leafs, and they put him on waivers, and he got claimed by Anaheim, and now he goes to Detroit in free agency. I get what Yzerman's doing here, Russ. It's like they wanted to keep their money clean because they're going to sign Lucas Raymond and they're going to sign Moritz Seider. But you need more than that. And if you look at their defense,
they're probably not even a playoff team yet.
No, and then I buried the lead here because then in goaltending, they add Cam Talbot on a 2-year deal, and they add Jack Campbell.
Well, isn't he from that area? No, he's from Texas.
Yes,
no, I don't know what they're doing.
He's from Port Huron. He was born in Port Huron.
Oh, yes. I thought he was from the area, but then he moved to Texas, I think. I don't know. But, yeah, so he's from the area. Whatever. They're not a playoff team. Like, they're close, but they just don't – unless guys make big jumps, they're not there yet. All right, so I'm going to rip a team here. Okay. One I am going to rip just because they only made like one pickup, Alex Barber. I don't understand the Montreal Canadiens anymore. They're year 4 into their rebuild. At this point, they should have reached out in free agency for somebody who's never been able to make it rather than somebody who's never been able to make it in the NHL. They're going to go through year 4 here and be not much closer to being a playoff team. So by year 5, what are we doing? This is like a 7-year plan that they're on path for. It's going too slow in Montreal.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised the Montreal fans aren't rioting.
I am too.
Because now the thing is, Montreal has a problem. Montreal players don't want to play in Montreal. There's too much pressure.
Some players. I still think others do.
No, others do, but okay, what the move that they did that I liked, and Tony Soprano just stole my thunder, was the Slavkovsky extension. They got him at a good amount for long term. That's a good move. So they're smart when they get a good young player, and the young player proves that they can play in that town. They're locking them up. They got Suzuki locked up. They got Caulfield locked up. Now they have Slavkovsky locked up. That's good. The problem is they don't have enough. I mean, right now their goaltending is Caden Primo and Samuel Montembeault. They have some good young defensemen, but Ryan.
They're not there, and they've got $10 million in cap space. What are you doing?
Right,
you're not a player.
Well, right, and that's the thing. They don't think that they're close enough to go out and spend that money.
Right, so that's an organizational failure.
Right now,
they shouldn't be a guaranteed playoff team in year 4. But they should be knocking on the door. They're not knocking on anybody's door.
No, honestly, it's an argument of whether they or Ottawa are the last place team in the Atlantic. Probably Montreal, because at least Ottawa went out and got themselves a goaltender. But I mean, I'm not impressed by the Montreal roster. I mean, they got good young kids. They just don't have the support structure of the veteran guy. And then maybe that's the problem. They can't, their problem is they've got guys like Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson and Christian Dvorak eating up millions of dollars.
And they've never done anything about it.
No. And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that they can get players to go there unless they overpay them, and they don't want to overpay them.
So that's a problem. The other one is the Ottawa Senators, because yes, they got a goalie, and they did nothing else. Yeah. Like, they really, sure, you re-signed Shane Pinto, great, but they got nobody of note. This is a team that desperately needs to make the playoffs so new ownership can look good, and they're feeding the fans crumbs.
Here's where, you have to read between the lines here. They make the trade of Chychrun to Washington for Nick Jensen and a draft pick. So that tells you that it's an awful trade. And what it tells you is that Chychrun had no intention of signing a contract extension in Ottawa. So as soon as we heard those Thomas Chabot rumors, and the only way that the Thomas Chabot rumors made sense is if you were clearing salary by trading Chabot to sign Chychrun. They didn't trade Chabot, and they traded Chychrun, so that Chychrun had no intention of re-signing. Now, we don't know about Chychrun and Washington, but I think Washington is content to see what they have in him for a year. Let him sort of feel his way there, and if they can get him re-signed, they have the cap space to do it. but they're willing to take the risk because the cost was so little. The Nick Jensen's okay, but he's not I think he's a 5. I think he's
Here's the other problem too. So considering how bad their defense is, and it's not great. I love Jake Sanderson, and Zub is good, and Shabbat's still okay. Like you said, it's week after that.
Mm-hmm.
And they only have $3,600,000 in cap space. It's the worst use of cap space in the league for the amount of overall talent that they have.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. I mean, they added Perron. I think they spent a little too much on Perron.
He's old, and he's old.
He's 36, and they gave him a 2-year deal of $4 million. Pinto being re-signed. He's young, 3.75. That's quality.
But look at the blue line. It's awful.
Yeah, here you go. This is the blue line: Sanderson, Shabbat, Zub, Nick Jensen, Travis Hamonic, and Jacob Bernard Docker.
It's awful.
It's not good. Some contracts that got some extensions. The Pavel Buchnevich extension with St. Louis that ends all the rumors of him being traded. $6 million, I believe it was, for 8 years. That's pretty good business there for Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, that's good. Look, Armstrong's always pretty good, and
5.8. Sorry.
Yeah, they're a team that may make it, may not, but they're at least going to be competitive. So
they operated outside on the edges. Their moves were like, okay, they took on. They traded for Texier. They took on the Joseph brothers. They got who was the other one that was a salary dump? There was another one. It was Joseph and Radek Faksa. So they had cap space and they took salary dumps from other teams on short term. Vax had a year left. Joseph had 2 years left. I'm not saying that they're not decent players, but I don't know. I don't know if there's enough there.
So here's my other winner.
Okay.
My other winner is the Dallas Stars. They're the team that fiscally was great and brought in guys that could help. They bring back Duchesne. That's good. Yeah, I didn't like them losing Tanev. But then they got Dumbo, Lyubushkin, and Brendan Smith. That's good. They actually needed more numbers than just the one guy in Tanev. And now they might actually have a good enough defense to compete. And so they didn't overspend. They brought in players that can play and play specific roles. Right. And I give Jim Nill credit. This is why Jim Nill is at the top of his game, man.
I like the Duchesne re-signing. He wanted to stay there. $3 million is very manageable for a quality player. Dumba at 3.75 on a 2-year deal is good business. He's a right shot D. Lyubushkin maybe a little high, but again, it's right hand shot.
Right.
The thing was I compared Lyubushkin at 3.25 to keeping Hakanpää at $1.5 million. And if it was one or the other, I would have kept Hakanpää. But maybe once they signed Lyubushkin, they had no interest in Hakanpää because of the same.
Right, but again, Lyubushkin,
he's more mobile. He's more mobile than Hakanpää.
More mobile. That's what they're looking at.
They re-signed Lundqvist after not qualifying him, so they wanted to get him out of. I think the qualifying offer would have been higher. Brendan Smith.
The defense now is better than it was last year overall. Yeah. They lost a better player, but the overall depth of it is better.
Yeah, and the replacement of Casey DeSmith for Wedgwood is
that's pretty good for regular season wins.
Yeah, that's pretty decent. So yeah, I think they did good business. I mean, I like I said,
not sexy, right? I get it. It's not sexy. They didn't get Stamkos. They didn't. But you know what? They're already a winner. Like that's the thing about the Dallas Stars. They're already a winner, and now they're right on the cusp again.
Now, we'll end with this because people could say, well, Utah had a great July 1 and did great, or San Jose or Chicago. They had to overpay players to play there.
They're looking to get to the cap floor.
Right. Okay. I mean, just, right. Well, not even to the cap floor. They're looking to surround young players with veterans. I mean, what happened on July 1 with Chicago is the same thing that happened last year, where they paid Nick Foligno and they paid Jason Dickinson to stay around. What did they do? They said they gave Tyler Bertuzzi 4 years at $5.5 million. That's an overpay. I like Bertuzzi, but the Leafs were only willing to pay him, I think, in the 4 range.
He didn't impress me at times in the year. I'm sorry.
Second half of the year, he played really well.
No, I know, but there's too much inconsistency to pay him the way they did.
Agreed. They bring back Teravainen on a 3-year deal and give him $5.4 million. They bring in Patrick Maroon as a protector. So Patrick Maroon and Foligno will protect Connor Bedard. They signed Alec Martinez for a year. They signed TJ Brody for 2 years, at $3.75 million. Laurent Brossois at 3.3. These are all short-term deals. And by the way, like all of them except for Bertuzzi are 2 years or less. Why? Because Bedard's contract will come on board. His new contract will come on board after his ELC, and he'll probably end up getting paid $10 million. So they don't want to commit themselves to anything after his ELC is over with. San Jose with the same thing. I mean, they spend. I'm not saying, some of these guys aren't good players, but they spent stupid money, really stupid. Tyler Toffoli, $6 million at 4 years.
Yeah, he's happy.
Yeah, Alex Wenberg, $5 million for 2 years. I mean, just bizarre. So, but
yeah, and the one thing I was going to mention, because I've just looked at everything that Utah is doing, and I liked what they did in the draft. But they're not ready to compete. They showed in free agency they're not ready to compete.
No, and okay, we'll just mention it because it's rumor, and there continues to be the Mitch Marner chatter, and we'll be talking about this all summer. I mean, I don't know whether it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, but the chatter is right now is Vegas and Utah. Now I mentioned those as two possibilities. I mean, Utah's still got the cap space to make a deal.
We all mentioned Utah because it was obvious they have cap space.
Right, but the problem here is will Mitch Marner go to Utah?
I think he would go to Vegas. I don't think he would go to Utah. And I don't think he's going anywhere. But I'm just saying, if he was going to go somewhere, Vegas is more likely.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas, he could win there. But I think he wants to go. I just think he can't say he wants to go. Because if he says he wants to go, then he's a pariah in his hometown.
Well, I mean, whatever. At some point, it's either – I think he's staying anyhow, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, if he it's the same situation as last year. If you're keeping him, you have to extend him, and
that's what's going to happen.
And unlike Nylander, I don't think they want to extend Marner. And, of course, Brian Burke came out on one of the Toronto podcasts and said they should trade Nylander and not Marner. It's like, okay, but Nylander's got a no-move clause too, Brian.
I also want to bring this up. Edmonton Oilers, you needed to get better defensively and overall team defense. Yep. Bringing Jeff Skinner in does not do that. You had plenty of offense. Offense did not lose you the Stanley Cup.
No, Jeff Skinner is replacing Warren Fogle, because Warren Fogle, I believe, was in the top 6 for them. But at
least Warren Fogle plays a complete game. Jeff Skinner's never played a complete game.
No, and he never will. But if the expectation is to bring Jeff Skinner in to score goals, and you put him with Draisaitl or McDavid, then he will score goals. He might score 30. But don't expect him to play in his own end, because he never has. And for those people who hate the Edmonton Oilers, Jeff Skinner has never played a playoff game in 1,006 regular season games. For those who hate the Edmonton Oilers, that should be music to your ears. So, anyway, we'll end there, and we'll be back on Friday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.